lovely. Okay, hello everybody. I just did the worst intro ever. Hello everybody and welcome to another video. I did promise myself I would probably not do another map breakout video on techniques and how to do it and stuff, but I've caught myself out. I've been doing something pretty interesting yesterday. This was going to be a little bonus thing that I was going to add onto a news video, but I've decided no, let's do a full feature on it, okay? This is probably the last map breakout style video I'm going to do, but it's important for a lot of things besides just map breaking out. Today I want to talk to you guys about how shadow steps work in the game and how you can use this to your advantage to get out of maps. Now, all of this is anecdotal. This is what I think the game engine works like, so do bear that in mind. I might talk drivel, but at least you will know how to play the game to do cool stuff with shadow steps. So let's address this question first of all. Where the hell am I? I'm on some kind of private little garden area. If I press M, you guys will see I'm in Lion's Arch. Alright, this is pretty cool. There doesn't seem to be any way to get here though. There's a nice little waterfall there with a statue with a jug. There's a doorway into a building with a nice basement-y area. And there's this huge mansion here. There's loads of stuff, loads of places to go in this cool mansion. However, this is completely sealed off from Lion's Arch. This is a doorway that you're not meant to be able to get through. I'm actually broken out of the map, technically, and in one of the cooler areas I've seen you can break out of the map. This is actually a personal story area. I think you only get to see if you pick a specific order or a specific thing at one moment. So I actually don't recall ever coming here in my personal story. I'm going to feel pretty bad if this is one of those areas that you go to in every single personal story, but I don't recall coming to it. And yet here it is in its full glory, just out in Lion's Arch, that you're not meant to be able to get to. This is true for most personal story type areas in Guild Wars 2. A lot of them just take place in exact areas you'd see in the real world, but every now and then you do a personal story step that takes you into some cave or mansion, as it were, or some extra location that you shouldn't really be able to access in the real world that should be sealed off. I believe after this personal story step they say, oh, we're going to seal off this mansion or something. But you can get always back into these areas. There's quite a few of them. I'm going to show you at least 2 today, as we're talking about shadow steps and so forth. And yeah, you can pick an area and sort of hang out as a cool little place. For the record, I actually didn't find this. I didn't find anything I'm going to show you in this video. This came to my attention the other day when there was a Reddit thread where a guy was saying, hey, Lion's Arch is going to get destroyed, so I may as well show you this cool place I'm getting to. And then he was really cryptic about how to get in. But then we just came here and a friend of mine was like, oh, okay, so this is how shadow step works. And she just got in really quickly, which is pretty cool. So I'll show you guys how to do it. We're going to end the video with how to get to this cool little mansion, but for now let's just talk about how shadow steps work in general. So the skills in question are Lightning Flash on the Elementalist, Infiltrator's Arrow on the Thief, which is the skill 5 on Shortbow, Shadow Step on the Thief. Some other classes do have blinks, but they're not ground targeted, so they're really finicky to work with. Really, you want a blink ability that actually allows you to move somewhere. Of course, blink itself as well on the Mesmer is another great example. Really, those are the 3 classes you're going to be doing this most with, but there are very vague potential options on the other classes. What these skills do is they're ground targeted abilities. You can choose a location anywhere around you within their range. Mesmers can trait to have 1200 range, but I think Thieves mostly, Shadow Step they have 1200 range. We as Elementalists have 900 range. You can select an area, and when I let go of this ground target, I instantly get moved to this location. How did the game decide that I could move here? You guys might have noticed sometimes when you try to blink to an area, it doesn't work. Well, I believe, this is my speculation, I believe it has a lot to do with the NPCs. You saw this local, for example, just now, walked from where they were currently stood over here and patrolled over to this location. This guy here as well is obviously walking around. This is what the NPCs do. These allies of ours, if there were enemies in the area, the AI would detect, hey, there's an enemy stood over here, and they'd run straight to it. How do the NPCs work? I believe the way that the game detects this is through all playable areas, all areas the developers expect NPCs and players to be wandering around, they layer with a path grid. And this is basically like a big mesh of nodes that are like invisible to our eye, but the AI uses to detect, hey, I can walk from here. So for example, if this local were to aggro on an enemy right now, the game would say, okay, how can this local walk to the enemy? It would detect that it's close to one node, it would detect another, and then it would create a path between the two that's the quickest route. So for example, when you're in escort events, you guys will see you'll be escorting the NPC along, and they'll get to a specific node, and then they'll aggro on an enemy, and they'll walk away from their node, this invisible node that you can't see. They'll fight the enemy, and then instead of like continuing on their regular way immediately, what they do is they turn around and walk back to where they were originally. Have you ever wondered why they do that? That's because of the path grids. Again, this is all speculation, but that's because of the path grids. They're going back to where they were originally meant to be, and then they continue their route, and it's very frustrating and kind of annoying to see. But that's sort of ArenaNet's way of ensuring that these NPCs, I suppose, don't get wildly out of control and go miles and miles and miles away. So, what does this have to do with flashes? There are some times where you can't flash from one place to another. So, for example, I might do a bit of movie magic here to get us to where I want to be. But you guys know that there's a jumping puzzle just near here, at least I would hope you know. Okay, so there we go. Right, I did a little bit of a trick there that's not actually got anything to do with the video. But this is the end of the Troll's End jumping puzzle, just now before the cut I was over there. This is the end of the jumping puzzle, if you guys remember, where you start by jumping down like the Mario pipe and then you go through all of the caves. Now this is a good example of the way of a situation where you cannot lightning flash or you cannot blink, right? So down on the floor where the NPCs were just walking around, I could do it like fine. However, you guys will have noticed probably sometime around launch that if you can't like blink over gaps. So there's a gap here stopping me from getting to the chest. If I try and blink to it, nothing happens, right? I shift forward a little bit to the absolute edge of the area, but I can't get there. Now, why is that? Well, it's very easy to explain. Think about NPCs or enemies, right? Could an NPC walk from where I'm currently stood over onto that rock? The answer is no, they couldn't, right? Because the path grid is blocked off here. How would it decide, okay, I want to get over here, because they can't jump, right? It would try and path directly to them, realize that there's a gap, explore all its other options. Is there any way to walk down on the floor and then come up and back around? No. Then, unfortunately, we can't make it. We shift forward to as close as we possibly can to the area, and then we are unable to move any further. This is why it's important to have skills that actually move you physically, such as the experimental rifle, which I just used to trick my way up here, rather than blinks, because these can, as long as this thing doesn't backfire on me, which I'm sure it will, so I'm going to pop stability, which can move you over these, because they're not actually blinking, they're just physically moving you from one location to another. I just got Daily Puzzle Jumper, that's wonderful. But sometimes you can blink across gaps like this. And I'll give you a perfect example of one of those situations that people use a lot of the time in PvP. And this is where this has practical use outside of breaking out of maps. So I'll see you guys in PvP. Okay, now hopefully no players join here and completely interrupt what we're doing here. But this is the Forest of Niflhel, and this area I'm coming up to right now is the center node, the middle of the map. For those of you who are unaware of the way this map works, like you can walk up to this node, you're contesting this, you're fighting here, but there's these ledges up on the side, right? And you can actually, by walking a really long way, get all the way around the back of to these, and then have some positional advantage, and you can attack people without much fear of them attacking you. However, there is a way to trick your way up onto these ledges. But let's consider the rules I just set in motion. That if you were an NPC, could you walk there? Now this is up a big cliff. NPCs could not walk here. So what happens if we try and blink up here, right? We should fail. Let's see what happens. Yeah, we fail. The game tries to path us as close as we can possibly go, but then it errors out or whatever, and it decides, no, that's an illegal action, and we can't go any further. However, there is still a way to blink up. Remember what I said about the way that the path grids work. All this is playable terrain, and there is a huge route. If you guys look at the map right now, if I walk all the way, oh no, not that much. If I walk all the way around this river and then up and around the side there, I can actually get up there. So if I stand about here at the bottom of the stairs, at the bottom of this ramp, where the game can actually detect a path grid that goes all the way around there, in theory, I can now blink up onto the top of the keep. Now, I could mess this up, and I always mess this up, and I hate it. There's actually another method as well. But, okay, so now, if I try it from here, so that I'm in range to where the game can detect these path grids all the way around me, imagine I have, like, an invisible circle, an invisible radius around me for what the game can actually detect. So, let's try it. I hope this works. You gotta, like, get it. You gotta get it like that, if I remember rightly. Damn it, I messed up. 1 second. Cut. Cut. I'm actually messing this up so many times in a row, and I don't even understand why. I used to be able to do this every single time. Let's try it like that. There we go. Awesome. So, as you guys can see, I now managed to blink up. Why was that? It was because I was stood closer to that area so the game could more easily detect that there was actually a safe and legal path to go up. So as you can imagine, there is actually also a big invisible radius around us, and you want to play into that sometimes when you're breaking out of areas or trying to take shortcuts. This is a practical example of something people with blinks can do. Thieves, namely, who have got much more access to it, so they can get up and harass their enemies that are on the side of the keep. PvP is full of blinks and tricks like this that are completely allowed, and the devs accept that they're a part of the gameplay. They're like these skill-based things you can do to actually push an advantage for your team. Another cool little thing here, so could an NPC walk from where I currently am to over there? No, but we can still blink across because the game still can see that we could walk over here. So in fact, what I just said was false. An NPC could walk. If I was an NPC and I aggroed on someone over there, I would immediately path around this U-bend here. Just like from where I was previously stood, I would path around from the other side. You can see this behavior in enemies as well when you attack them from cliffs, obviously. They will try and walk around the cliff, but if the cliff is so long that there's no feasible way that they could ever walk around it, the enemy instead doesn't aggro on you and it becomes invulnerable to you, right? This is the exact same premise, and this is the way the game detects whether you should be allowed to lightning flash or not. It's actually, I guess, a bit of a shortcutty way that they did it, quite a clever way, without having to, you know, set up an entirely new system to allow people to blink here, there, or anywhere. Okay. So how else does this help us, I hear you wonder? Yes, in PvP, I just demonstrated you can go from one regular area of the map to another regular area of the map, even if it looks like you shouldn't have been able to, by sort of moving into the range so that the game can detect through the path grids what's going on. How else does this help us? Well, I'll show you guys another imitation of flashes, right? Another demonstration here. We're currently in Bloodtide Coast, currently broken out of the map. Okay, we're currently in a cool little area. This is sort of near where the worm spawns. It's a fun place to come to. Here we've got this nice big flat plain, right? Now, what happens if I try and blink here? I have broken out of the map. What will happen? It looks like I should be able to walk there, right? If I was an NPC, sure, I would be able to walk over there. But if I try it, I don't move anywhere. You can see the skill obviously went off, the lightning flash came down, but I didn't move. I didn't even shift forward slightly. Why is that? That's because I'm completely off of ArenaNet's like path grids right now. They don't bother laying all these areas out because these aren't areas that they expect players to ever get to in the game. There's never going to be any NPCs here or anything important, so why bother? And because of this, it means that while we're in these illegal areas, those skills don't work. Now, I will say something contrary to everything I've just explained. You can pop NPCs, obviously, like I can use a fire Ellie powder, and by all this logic, the fire Ellie powder shouldn't follow me, right? The fire elemental should just summon on that spot and stay there. Yet, he still can follow me. And this is because I think NPCs that are, like, bound to a player, what they do is they just keep detecting if they can be close to the player or not. And can you see how he's, like, teleporting towards me like this? This is because, if you guys imagine sometimes, say, you're in a personal story instance and Logan gets caught really far away from you, there's a moment where Logan will just blink to you. This is the same thing here. The game's detecting, oh god, it's so far away right now, we can't even path to the character that they're meant to be following. So instead of walking around with us normally, they just blink. And this should happen universally with any of these kind of things that you pop, as you can see here. So you can do this kind of thing. You can blink if you're in a class that can't blink. You can know whether you're in an area that's been pathed out or not by doing these kinds of tricks. None of the run animations will be working anymore. Again, though, I came here to ask you to answer a question here. How does this help us? Well, the game is always striving to move you. If you're going to try and lightning flash somewhere, the game is always striving to move you from an illegal place to a legal one, right? It doesn't want you in any of these areas. If I tried to blink out of the map, it wouldn't let me. It'd be like, no, there's no path grids there. There's nothing there, so no, you're just not allowed. But if I'm already out of the path grids and I try and blink somewhere close to a path grid, what's the game going to do? It's going to snap me quite violently to the nearest legal node. And that can push you through walls even when you're not meant to be able to go through them. So I'll show you guys that in action. We're going to go back to Lion's Arch because Lion's Arch is cool. And I'm going to miss it. In theory, it might come back. A lot of people raise a lot of very good points in a video I did recently about how the Asura gates are there and all the personal story is there and the fractals are there and there's a lot of stuff that just wouldn't make sense. So, how does this help us? Let's see this in action. This barn roof here, okay? Right now, we've currently got a building. This building is a lot like the mansion I showed you guys at the start of the video. This building is completely sealed off. This is the entrance to it. There's a lion guard guarding it. It's sealed off. There is a personal story mission where you get to go inside this house, and everything inside that house is completely built, just as I explained before, but you're not meant to be able to get it in the real world. There is no way in, okay? No physical way you can walk into this building. There are just walls everywhere, and that's about it. However, we can blink in there. I'm currently on a barn roof, okay? If I try and blink across the barn roof, I didn't go anywhere. What does that mean? That means I'm in an illegal area. I'm not really broken out of the map, but ArenaNet never bothered to path anything on this barn roof. Why would anything be up here? So, currently we're in an illegal place, and the game's going to try its best to put us somewhere legal. So if I stand against this wall here, okay, I can actually clip my camera just slightly, or I could the other day. I probably can't anymore. But behind this wall, okay, is a multi-storied house, right? You got the ground floor down there. The first floor starts around about here. You got these windows, but it starts just like halfway through the windows are really. And those floors are pathed. It's funny, ArenaNet don't want you getting in there, but all they did was bar this off. They didn't like manually go through and right, we're going to delete all of this stuff. That would just be too much effort. So if we stand or directly against this wall and aim a flash halfway up at about where we perceive the ground floor would be, where we're right next to like one of those nodes, and we hit the skill, we blink through the wall directly, the game snaps us through the wall into the building. And so we've just gone through solid terrain because we were in an illegal area and the game so desperately wanted to put us into a legal one. Again, this is all speculation. Someone could like leave a comment and be like, oh, this is all so wrong, this is not how it works, but I'm pretty sure. From my days modding the Elder Scrolls games, I can tell you that this is the way it works. So here, look, you can now see we are now in what is an Order of Whispers personal story mission. I won't spoil what happens here. But yeah, you can come into the cave, it's all here. Obviously, it's fragmented, it's not all 100% as it should be. But the key thing with a lot of these areas, places are, particularly with regard trying to break out the map, when you're here in the personal story, ArenaNet can be really forceful with you. They can say, if you move out of the range of this area, they kick you from the instance, don't they? And what that means is they can be kind of lazy about the terrain. You know, they can, so for example, in this cave, you can actually climb these rocks and get up there and then completely break out of Lion's Arch. And that's because in the personal story instance, yes, you could in theory do it as well, but as soon as you get up there, you immediately get the warning saying you're about to get kicked from the instance, and then that's it. But because we're here in just regular Lion's Arch, and that's not a factor, you can use this to your advantage to break out and get to all kinds of cool areas. Anyway, that's not the main demonstration of the video. We're just talking about lightning flashes and stuff. As you can see, I can safely blink around right now because this was all mapped out for the personal story. That's basically everything you need to know, guys. So let's put everything we have learnt together to get to where this video began. I've been recording for half an hour and I don't actually know how long this video is going to be. But, so yeah, again, we've got basically a very similar style situation here, where we have a building that is completely sealed off. There is cool stuff inside. You're not meant to be able to get inside, but we can use blinks or anything like that to bug our way through. And again, there are more legitimate uses of this. For example, at the clock tower in the Battle of Kylo, there's a lot of places where you can use this to break through walls and immediately jump to the second floor or get up onto the ledges surrounding the clock tower. And it's all stuff they encourage in PvP. I'm not so sure that they would encourage it in PvE, but it is very cool when you find places like this. So again, big sealed off mansion. This mansion, for the record, is a replica, like layout-wise, I suppose, of one of the Heart quests in Gendaron Fields. So we're going to do the exact same concept. The guy on Reddit did like this crazy thing where he's jumping around. We're going to do a much more simple one. Here's the front door. I'm now on the other side of the door, so I can see through the crack very slightly. But I'm on the wrong side, obviously. We can't get through. However, there are 2 floors to this place. So here's what my friend did. I just told her everything basically I've told you guys. And then she just basically figured this out very quickly. You can come onto this rafter just on the right. And now we're about level-ish with the second floor, wouldn't you say? I mean, if that's the door and then you leave a bit of leeway for the roof, second floor maybe starts about here. So to get into this cool mansion, what you have to do is come onto these rafters, which in themselves is a pretty cool little area, and aim some kind of teleport ability around on this window. This window is pretty much foolproof in my opinion. Aim on the window, blink through, we go through the wall onto the second floor, and there you go. We even got through a bookcase. And now we're in this very cool little mansion, which has just got so much detail in it. Like, look at this place. Look at all these like bookshelves. This reminded me, when I first came in here, I didn't realize it was a part of the personal story until someone else mentioned it. But when I first came in here, it reminded me of a comment that the devs made a long, long time ago, before launch or around launch, where they were talking about the way that they design maps. They were talking specifically at the time about Queensdale. And they were saying that, I guess at least for the initial maps, what they did was they made versions of the maps that were as cluttered and beautiful and full of stuff as they could possibly imagine. Like, the best that they could make it look, right? Regardless of FPS, none of that was an issue. It was just, let's make this place look awesome, you know. And you had these incredible vistas everywhere, insane amounts of clutter. Like, look at all the little details in here, like this peacock on a stand, and there's like a suit of armor somewhere. You got like these little bottles on the walls. You've got a buffet and a nice little couch here. They were talking about how they added tons and tons of details there. This cobweb in the corner, like, this is attention to detail you don't often see in Guild Wars 2. Really, you don't. Like, they can be very bare bones, especially in a lot of the later maps. They can be very, very bare bones. And this place reminded me of that. They talked about this method of developing they use, where they just make it look as good as possible, and then they go through like this painstaking, I'm sure, process of culling details out. Like, they keep cutting details, and try and find the best compromise. What detail can they cut that has the minimal impact on the views but maximum impact on the FPS, and then it gets cut down and down and down. And I've always been immensely curious what that state of the game was, you know, at least for Queensdale. What did Queensdale once look like when they had all this beautiful stuff in there? And it's always it's sort of one of those painful things, I guess, you have to do as a game developer at some point, where you really have to cut that stuff away, and you know how good it could have once been, or how good it was, and then you have to sort of move everything down because of all people with, you know, not great rigs, or it's just completely unviable and unfeasible. I also think for MMOs, because they can constantly get updated, and obviously everyone's hardware is constantly getting better, like, what a cool idea it would have been if they just, like, kept a backup copy or a save of what that version of the map once was like. So at some point in, like, 3-4 years, they can be like, yeah, let's do this, you know, add some living story thing about how, oh, everything's growing in Queensdale, and then just change it. That'd be so cool. But yeah, there's plenty of detail in here. That's immediately what came to my mind. It's a nice big little area. We were joking about it being like a Guild Hall style thing. You can obviously portal people in. If you're a Mesmer, you can like drop a portal and then go to a waypoint and then portal everyone through. But plenty to see, plenty to do. If you guys have ever thought of a personal story instance that is like a completely new area that you think you've been locked out of in the real world, you probably haven't. And using these rules, using this knowledge of the way Blink abilities work, maybe, just maybe, you can find your way into them. But there you go, guys. That's probably my last map breakout video. They're weird ones to do, but I find it all very, very fascinating. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time for more news, Q&A, all that good stuff. Have a good one, everyone.